1941 Liberty Wheat Penny, often simply called the Lincoln Wheat Cent, is a beloved coin in U.S. numismatic history. It belongs to the famous Wheat Penny series, which was minted between 1909 and 1958, and it carries both historical and sentimental value because of its connection to Abraham Lincoln and America's wartime era. The Lincoln Cent was first struck in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure, breaking the long-standing tradition of using symbolic images like Lady Liberty. The coin's design, created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, featured Lincoln's portrait on the obverse front and two wheat stalks on the reverse back, symbolizing prosperity and abundance. 1941 was a turning point for the United States. It marked the final year before America's direct involvement in World War II, as the attack on Pearl Harbor occurred in December of that year. The 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny, therefore, stands as a coin minted during a moment of immense change produced while the U.S. was still recovering from the Great Depression and just months away from entering the global conflict. The 1941 Wheat Penny was struck at 3 U.S. mints, San Francisco Mint S mint mark, over 92 million coins minted. With such high production numbers, 19 for 1 pennies were plentiful in circulation and many still survive today. However, pristine examples in uncirculated or proof condition remain highly sought after by collectors. Features a right-facing portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, with the motto "In God We Trust" above the word Liberty to the left and the date 19 for 1. To the right. If minted in Denver or San Francisco, the corresponding mint mark D or S appears just below the date. Displays to wheat stalks curving around the sides framing the inscriptions 1 cent United States of America, and the motto "Et pluribus unum." The simplicity and symbolism of the design made it one of America's most cherished coins. 1941. The Lincoln Wheat Penny had already been in circulation for over 3 decades, and it was one of the most familiar coins in everyday life. Its wide use made it a coin of the people, seen in the hands of soldiers, factory workers, farmers, and children alike. The coin not only represented economic value, but also carried a patriotic undertone, as Lincoln was a symbol of unity during turbulent times. Collector's prize. Certain era coins from 1941, including just 2 years after 1941, the U.S. Mint faced a copper shortage due to wartime needs. In 1943, pennies were struck in steel coated with zinc, instead of the traditional bronze composition. Thus, the 1941 penny represents one of the last years before America's entry into World War II changed coin production. 1941 Wheat Penny is common in circulated grades. Its value rises in higher grades. Proof versions, struck only at the Philadelphia Mint in limited numbers, can command hundreds of dollars. Era coins. The decision to place Abraham Lincoln on the cent in 1909 was groundbreaking. Before then, U.S. coins traditionally featured symbolic allegories like liberty or representations of freedom, but never actual historical figures. The 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth gave the U.S. Mint an opportunity to honor the president who preserved the Union during the Civil War. By 1941, Lincoln's portrait had already graced the cent for 32 years, making it one of the most recognized and respected designs in circulation. 1941 The United States was still emerging from the Great Depression, which had devastated the economy throughout the 1930s. Unemployment was dropping as industries ramped up production to support the Allied war effort even before America's official entry into World War II. Coins like the 1941 Wheat Penny were in heavy circulation. Passing through factories, farms, and households across the nation. Every penny mattered, and the cent was an important denomination for daily purchases, like bread, milk, or a newspaper. 1941. Lincoln Wheat Penny was composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This bronze mixture had been the standard since 1909, but it would soon change due to wartime needs. Copper was critical for producing ammunition, shell casings, and communication wires. This looming demand meant that the 1941 cent was one of the last to enjoy the traditional bronze composition before the steel pennies of 1943 were introduced. The technology used in 1941 to strike coins was more advanced than in the 19th century, but still imperfect. Dies were engraved by hand and sometimes wore out quickly, leading to misstrikes and doubling errors. The massive mintage of nearly 1.1 billion pennies in 1941 put a strain on the U.S. Mint's equipment which explains why error varieties from this year exist and are collectible today. United States did not officially enter World War II until December 1941. The nation was already gearing up for involvement. The 1941 wheat penny was carried in the pockets of young men who would later serve in the armed forces. It circulated in a society that was experiencing rationing, heightened patriotism, and uncertainty about the future. This adds a layer of human history to the coin. It wasn't just money, it was a companion in the daily lives of Americans preparing for Chong. Philadelphia, the oldest U.S. mint, produced the majority of the 1941 pennies, with over 887 million struck. These coins were widely distributed across the nation. Proof coins were also made in Philadelphia, carefully struck multiple times to achieve a mirror-like finish. These proofs were not for circulation, but sold directly to collectors, making them much rarer and more because of their slightly lower production compared to Philadelphia and Denver. Each mint mark tells a story of regional contribution to America's coinage system, reflecting the expansion of minting capacity across the country. Wheat penny series, officially called the Lincoln cent, began in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the coin featured Lincoln's profile on the obverse and two wheat ears on the reverse, symbolizing prosperity. The Lincoln wheat penny became a symbol of American values, including hard work, liberty, and unity. From 1909 until 1958, the wheat reverse remained, earning it the name wheat penny among collectors. 1944. The United States was deeply entrenched in World War II. The war placed heavy demands on natural resources, including copper, which was critical for ammunition production. To conserve copper, the U.S. Mint made drastic changes in 1943 by minting steel cents coated with zinc. These 1943 steel pennies were not well received. They rusted easily and were often confused with dimes. In response, the mint altered its strategy again in 1944. 1944 copper returned to the cent, but not in the same form as before. The U.S. Mint began melting down spent ammunition shell casings, which were made of brass, and used them to create the 1944 penny. Thus, the 1944 Liberty wheat penny was composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, technically classifying it as a brass coin. This unique wartime alloy gives 1944 cents a distinct golden brown appearance, different from the pre-war copper pennies. The 1944 Liberty wheat penny was produced in massive numbers due to economic demands of the war. It was minted at 3 locations. Philadelphia Mint. No mint mark, approx. 1.43 billion coins. Despite the large mintage, several rare and valuable varieties emerged. 1944 steel cent. A few 1944 cents were mistakenly struck on leftover 1943 steel plankets. These 1944 steel pennies are incredibly rare and can fetch over $100,000 at auction, depending on condition and mint mark. 1944 D/S, a rare variety where a Denver mint mark was punched over a San Francisco mint mark. These are prized by collectors. Off-center, some 1944 pennies exhibit minting errors, increasing their value among enthusiasts. The Lincoln cent was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person, Abraham Lincoln, rather than a symbolic figure like Lady Liberty. The 1944 penny continued this legacy during a time when Lincoln's values, unity, liberty, and perseverance deeply resonated with the nation at war. Lincoln's presence on the coin during World War II served as a subtle reminder of America's enduring principles in the face of global conflict. Because of its massive production, most 1944 wheat pennies are common. In 1944, the United States was at the peak of its industrial might. During World War II, factories that once made consumer goods had shifted to producing tanks, planes, and ammunition. Every resource was carefully allocated, and metals like copper and nickel were critical to the war effort. The U.S. government enforced strict rationing, and even coins were subject to scrutiny. The decision to use spent ammunition, shell casings for coin production, was not only symbolic but also strategic. It demonstrated that nothing was wasted, and every piece of metal was recycled for victory. From 1944 to 1946, the Lincoln cents were made from recycled shell casings, which were collected from military training grounds and battlefields. This made the coins themselves part of the war effort, minted quite literally from the remnants of conflict. These are sometimes referred to as shell case cents or victory cents, and though chemically similar to pre-war bronze cents, The slight differences in appearance are visible under close examination. The mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco used single squeeze dies to strike the coins. The high volume of production meant that quality control was not always perfect, which contributed to numerous errors and die varieties. Despite that, the 1944 pennies are generally well struck and display strong design elements. The obverse still used Victor D. Brenner's original design from 1909, which remained largely unchanged throughout the wheat cent era. Throughout the mid-20th century, the 1944 wheat cent became one of the most commonly found coins in circulation, especially among baby boomers, who often pulled them from pocket change. As part of beginning coin collections, the 1970s and 1980s, interest in coin collecting soared. The 1944 penny was often one of the first coins young collectors would identify and store in cardboard albums. This mass interest kept the coin's story alive across generations. While copper was reintroduced in 1944, a few leftover, zinc-coated steel plankets from 1943 were mistakenly used in 1944. This led to the ultra-rare 1944 steel penny, which is among the most valuable Lincoln cents in existence. Many people who lived through the 1940s have memories tied to these coins, using them for candy war bond drives and bus fare, a time when a single cent held more purchasing power and patriotic meaning. During World War II, nearly every aspect of American life was connected to the war effort, from Rosie the Riveter to ration books. Coins like the 1944 penny became miniature tokens of patriotism, literally minted from the tools of war and carried in the pockets of a determined nation. They were a daily reminder of sacrifice, unity,